Hi gang, I hope your work is coming along and you're having a good week. The last couple of days we've been working on the first part of step 4 of our multi-genre. Our first thing was to just take a prose piece or a poetry piece, any piece, and summarize it. Okay, one example. We're going to take another example now that we found in our research, and we're going to do our next step. Our next step is to make connections. So summary, I hope the summary went all right. Now we're just making connections, okay? That's the next step if we move on to those pages. I have decided to use a song which is called Get a Haircut and Get a Real Job. So I'm going to play it in the background a little bit here. Okay. So I'm using Get a Haircut and Get a Real Job as my example for what I want to do, make my connections to. So what I've done is I've included that down. I've included the lyrics, a link to the lyrics, and with it some notation, because what we want to do before we start writing is we want some notation. So annotating, right? So I've got my file up here on my other computer. I'm just taking a look on my school computer at the annotations. Now what I've noticed is if you don't have Word, like I don't have Word on my home computer, when I open it up I don't get the notation. That's okay, I'm going to talk you through the lyrics a little bit and talk you through the song. So there's a link to the song with the lyrics up, and then I have the sheet that has the notation. So there's a reason why I like this song, okay? Because I had long hair for quite a while. I didn't have long hair in high school, but as soon as I graduated high school, I grew my hair long. And I grew it long, and I kept it long for about 15 years. Okay? And this song kind of reminds me a little bit of my actual life. So looking at the lyrics, right? It starts off, I was a rebel from the day I left school. I grew my hair long, and I broke all the rules. That reminds me a little bit of me, because as soon as I left school, I grew my hair long. The reason why I had it short in school is because I wrestled. You can't really wrestle with long hair and stuff. So I grew my hair long. I was never really quite what people considered a rebel, but I like to kind of look that way, right? Sit around and listen to records all day with big ambitions of when I could play. My parents taught me what life was about, so I grew up the type they warned me about. They said my friends were just an unruly mob and I should get a haircut and get a real job. Okay, that's another thing that I get, a connection, right? I get this. I always found it really interesting that just because I had long hair, people assumed that I didn't have any direction in life, I wasn't going anywhere, you know, what's wrong with that guy? Next set of lyrics. Get a haircut and get a real job. Clean your act up and don't be a slob. This is our chorus. Get it together like your big brother Bob. Why don't you get a haircut and get a real job? So I think that's funny, because people really do like to judge on first appearances, right? So I knew a lot of guys, right, as you guys do, who weren't good people, but they had everybody fooled. Everybody assumed they were better than me. They had different hair, they dressed a different way, and so people assume things just based on that first appearance. This is part of why I chose this as my topic. Next, I even tried that 9 to 5 scene. I told myself that it was all a bad dream. I found a band and some good songs to play. Now I party all night and I sleep all day. So I've never really been a partier, but I do know what it's like to try and find a job that you don't hate. I spent a lot of time in my life trying to find a job I didn't hate. It was 3 years before I went to university, and I was a number of years after that before I became a teacher. But I did become a teacher, and I don't party all night, but I do relax all summer, so I get that too. Next one kind of fits with me. I like this. I met this chick. She was my #1 fan. She took me home to meet her mommy and dad. They took one look at me and said, "Oh my God, get a haircut and get a real job." Well, this is a part of the song that reminds me the most of my life, because my wife's parents did not like me when I was young. Her dad was a pastor. I didn't really fit the image of that he wanted for his daughter's boyfriend. Now, there were a lot of guys who he kind of liked better, I knew them. I knew they weren't really good people, but he saw appearance. I loved my father-in-law. He loves me. But at the time, um, he wanted kind of something else, someone else. So we get back to the course, um, and then we get to our last real verse. I hit the big time with my rock and roll band. The future's brighter now than I'd ever planned. I'm 10 times richer than my big brother Bob. But he's got a haircut and he's got a real job. So I love this. Because even though I didn't become a rock star, I just became a teacher. But it reminds me of the fact that I did eventually become a teacher. I ended up making it a lot better than I think most people expected. So despite my appearance, despite my hair, despite my rebellion when I was young. So that's my connection, that's my link to that song. So I went through it and I wrote those notes bit by bit as I went, right? What lines really speak to me? And then once that was done, then I was ready to go back and write up my connections kind of in paragraph form. So if you go to my model, my multi-genre model, the exemplar that I started, here's what I wrote. I've always liked this song. It's older than me, and I'm old, but this is older than me. Um, because it reminds me a lot of my own life. I was never a musician though, and I certainly didn't become a rock star. Nevertheless, there are a lot of things in this song that I connect with. First of all, when I was young and had just graduated high school, I grew my hair long. I'd always wrestled in high school, and once I was never going to wrestle anymore, I wanted to have long hair. Probably because Natasha, who was my girlfriend, and she's now my wife, she's in the other room right now, chatting on the phone with her friend. She really liked hair bands. She liked Harleys. She liked what we called headbanger stuff, especially when she was in junior high. And I wanted to impress Natasha. So the long hair, though, it made people assume things about me. Um, None of the assumptions were true. I didn't smoke. I didn't do drugs. I didn't even drink. Right? I never even drank. Um, I worked in a factory job, but I was saving money for school. I had direction. Uh, Natasha's parents, though, kind of back then assumed that I was bad news. They tried to get her to break up with me a few times and go out with other guys, which was ironic because I knew some of these guys that they would prefer to be with. They weren't good guys. They had shorter hair, but they weren't good guys. Uh, the thing I think I like best about the song is that the speaker ends up surprising everyone and being more successful than all the other people he was being compared to. And that's similar to what happened to me. A lot of people who knew me when I was younger are a little bit shocked to find out that I got a respectable job. I'm a teacher. Even the students back, okay, when I still had long hair when I first started teaching, even they weren't convinced, right? They were sure that I was a pothead. Never smoked pot, not a single time in my life. I've cut my hair since then. Sometimes I think about growing it again. Okay, so that's the connection of that poem or lyric, right? That song to my life. So your job now is to now take one of your texts, do some annotating. You should probably do annotating um, no matter which text you're using or what job you're doing. You should probably annotate some. So do some annotating, write some notes in it on the connections, and you know start to look that over, and then once you've got that, then organize it into paragraph form. All right, all right. We will see you guys in a day or two. I'll see you next week. Oh, when I would play, yeah. What life was about. I grew up the kind they warned me about. They said I'm really mob and I should Get a haircut and get a real job.